Hello again, friends, and welcome to what is a culmination of 10 years of the Kulwicki Driver Development Program. I'm Jim Trado, host of the national racing podcast, The Bull Ring. And it's my pleasure to have on Father Dale Grubba, a Wisconsin priest that did so many things and still does for so many when it comes to motorsports on every discipline across America. He got to know Alan quite well. Alan was a devout Catholic, and by goodness, Alan was something else. And Father Grubba got to know him well. Father Grubba, you also are the only one, I believe, that has written a book about Alan, and it's wonderful. It's the last book I read cover to cover, and it does tell the story of Alan in a lot of ways, but you know him intimately. It's neat to know that his legacy continues with this program, isn't it?
It really is. They say that you die twice. You die when you physically die, but then you die again when the last person that remembers you dies. And I think one of the main things about writing that book and also about the KDDP program is that it keeps Alan's name alive and he's far from dying and disappearing from the racing scene.
What was Alan like off the racetrack? A lot of people see him as a hard-nosed guy, always serious, always to the point. Um, he also was very, very committed to his faith. He went to mass often. Even on race weekends, he'd find the nearest Catholic church to whatever racetrack he was racing at. In his mindset, that was part of his process, part of his discipline. But you got to know him perhaps better than others. I never got to know him well. I got to be around him. I got to certainly talk to him, but you got to know him on other levels. How was he like off the racetrack?
Off the racetrack, he was just totally different, and he would tell you that he was one person at the track, another person off the track. I remember one Daytona 500 where things weren't going well, and he was really thrashing with his car and with his crew to get things proper and get his car race worthy. And at times like that, if you were a photographer or a writer, if you were smart, you just backed off and didn't bother him because it wasn't going to work. And I know I backed off and Alan had this sort of Rolodex mind that, okay, where did so and so go? I didn't see him. And so about 2 weeks later, he called me, and he always called at 7:30 in the morning. And he called me and he said, "Where did you go at the Daytona 500? I even went out over to your hotel and looked for you." And I just said, "Alan, I knew that you were busy, and I knew that you were occupied with getting that car to run properly. So I just backed off and left you alone." But at the same time, when he wasn't at the track, he could really be a funny person, and he had a great sense of humor that went with it. But just all kinds of different things that like racing with people to the restaurant at night after they would get done work, and sliding into the parking lot area of a hotel that they were going to eat at, or things like they would be going through McDonald's for takeouts, and he would ease up behind somebody and just start pushing them through before they ever picked up their order. Just little things like that were just so humorous. And another thing was really, all of his girlfriends. Humpy Wheeler, the promoter at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and I used to keep track of them and where they went because they were always disappearing. He had this list in his wallet of qualities for the person that he was going to marry, and but at the funeral, when I was giving his funeral sermon, Bobby Allison was there. When I was giving his funeral sermon, I would mention the girlfriends, and I said, one of the girlfriends was just beautiful. And then I asked, where did she go? And he said, she smoked 5 years ago and she might start smoking again. And I couldn't have that. And then, and then I would go to Charlotte, and I would be in Humpy's office, and he would say, Alan had this beautiful girl because they went to the same church at St. Thomas Aquinas. And he said, so I said to Alan, this is Humpy talking, I said, where did that girl go? She was beautiful. She knew everything about the Catholic Church. She genuflected when she went in the pews, she used the missalette and so forth. Where did she go? And he said, oh, she didn't like the same kind of music that I liked, and I couldn't have anything to do with that. But then and then Bobby would be watching, and all these girls had shown up at the funeral. So he would say, when you said that, five of them nodded. Yeah, that was me. That was me. But the funniest of all was this. I confronted him and I said, Alan, where did that girl go? And Alan, being Alan, says, well, she had a propensity for wide hips. And I wasn't going to marry anybody that was going to have wide hips. And later, I talked to his uncle, and his uncle said, that dumb Alan, he said, he's so naive. Didn't he realize that women get wide hips when they have babies? But that was Alan, and it was just part of and parcel of his life and the way that he thought, and his actions and his life off the track were much different than his life at the track.
Alan won the championship in November of 1992. He came back to Wisconsin in March of 1993 for an Alan Kulwicki day. I think it was March, maybe it was February. Came back for a day to have his recognition at Greenfield High School. I happened to be part of the MC and planning of that a little bit, and I got to MC the event, and Alan was reluctant to come. He said, people forgot about me. There's no way there are going to be more than 12 people showing up. And he was honestly telling our good friend Terry Jeffords, his longtime confidant, I don't think I'm coming. Nobody's going to remember me. I moved down too many years ago, and no one's going to care. The people organizing the event, Padre, on the day before said, well, we have this pennant string. It's about 20 feet long. We're going to zigzag it right in front of the stage. And as soon as Alan's done saying his comments, and we'll take some questions from the audience, we'll just have them line up for some autographs. I looked at them, and we were in the cafeteria, and I said, how many doors can you open? How many hallways can you unblock for this event? 7,000 people showed up that day to recognize Alan. Some came with mugs of A&W root beer. Yeah, the mug and everything, still with the root beer in it, dropping it off on the table, and Alan signed everyone's autograph. People are coming by with brandy old fashions. Those people knew him through those factions of life around Wisconsin. You also got to spend a lot of time with a lot of people writing your book about when he won his first feature at Leo Speedway in a dirt late model, on through from the go-kart days on through to racing and confiding in you in NASCAR. There's got to be a lot more stories told. I'm glad you wrote a book about it. But in terms of Alan's legacy, these kids, these last 10 years, have done something special. The program has been special. And thanks to Thelma and Jerry Kulwicki for saying we need to do something in Alan's honor that continues on in scholarship programs at UNC Charlotte, scholarship program that continues on at his alma mater, UW Milwaukee, in the engineering department. It's amazing to know how much he was thought of as a loner, as a one. He does everything himself. But man, there's so many people that have benefited from this program. Here we are 10 years into this. And I know that Ty Majeski and others have become friends of yours through the program. And it's really neat to see how this has all come together over the lifetime of Alan. I don't think he would ever have expected this, would he? That at age 38, he'd pass on and his legacy would be here 30 some years later.
No, one of the little things I would add to that story about he didn't believe that there would be anybody showing up. But Mike Joy was one of the people that came. And if you remember on the way back to the airport, they had to go out and there's this story about how Alan had collected all his race tires, the used ones, and they were going to get rid of them. And they were going to throw them in this empty parking lot or lot. And so they make it like a big, mysterious, middle of the night thing. And they load all these tires up and go out to this lot and throw them over the fence. And then they come back to the shop. And that Alan being Alan, and again, he was a little bit stingy at times, but Alan being Alan, that was one of the few times that he bought everybody beer. That when they got done with this big escapade, he bought beer. But the thing was, Mike Joy wanted to go back to that site. And if I remember right, they stopped and he picked up a brick or something and took it home as part of the memory of that. But to add to what you've said, one of the beauties of this program that has been started, and I've been with it from the get-go. One of the beauties of it is, I would never have known these drivers as well because they come from all over the country. But there are some wonderful, wonderful young men that are involved in this program and have been involved in this program. Sometimes I think in our culture and in our time, we tend to forget, that there are people out there that are just outstanding in their character, in their motivation, the lessons of perseverance and determination. Uh, I think that's for me, I probably benefit as much from the program as do the people who are participants in the program, just by getting to know these young men and how great they really are.
As we've shared, you've been around Alan a long time. I've been on the peripheral. I've been in front of him. I've interviewed him. I've also unfortunately had the opportunity to celebrate Alan in his passing at his funeral mass. I got the screens lined up to play the My Way video. I had a chance to help induct him into the Wisconsin Sports Hall of Fame with Kyle Petty. Those kind of moments live on, but more importantly, he still lives on in a lot of ways. For those who don't know, Father Grubba has been a photographer for Stock Car Magazine. He's been a columnist for decades for Checkerfly Racing News and other publications. You've seen racing on every level, and you still love going to Angel Park Speedway and the Dirt Midgets and watching them on Sundays and going to the Slinger Nationals and all these other wonderful races. You also have a chance to go to NASCAR events. You got to accompany Kurt Busch when he did the double, Indianapolis, then the Charlotte World 600. I say all this as a reference to how it's important to have people like you involved in the program, but how important is it for you as people may come up to you 10 years after and say, hey, remember that story I told you about Alan? Hey, here's the book I remember that I had that day, or the program from that event that Alan signed. I want you to see it. Those kind of things are forever touching us still, aren't they?
They really are. And I think that's one of the beauties of racing fans, that they tend to honor people, not just who are present and alive, but they honor the past. I've been totally amazed. I've been doing on the anniversary. In the Catholic Church, you honored the death date of saints because you didn't always know when they were born. So I've been honoring different drivers on the dates of their passing. And the most recent one was Tom Refner. And I was just recently, that video reached 3,000 viewers. And it's just a sign of how they are honored, and they're honored right now, years after they have passed. And I think that's just a wonderful part of this sport. And Alan fits right into that category, uh, I think.
Well, part of the program is raising awareness for others. Part of the program for Alan was raising awareness by getting to know key people like yourself, Humpy Wheeler, other close friends. There weren't many, but the confidence he had and the confidence he had in people, it didn't go deep. But man, he was really somebody that you could certainly expect a call from, right? And he would probably say, "Okay, I got 10 minutes, it'd be an hour." There were ways he got through these things. There are also ways he was burdened on his own right when he lost the sponsorship in Xerox and started the year without a race car sponsor. And he said, I have mouths to feed. We have a race to run, and I'm going to do it out of my own pocket. So as frugal as he may have been then and
Yeah.
still, we all benefit because he was able to put a car on the racetrack, get a sponsorship, and somehow, some way make up 278 points and win the championship in Atlanta in 1992. All those touch points, Padre, you've had a lot of people you've been able to cross reference and be part of.
Mhm.
When it comes to these young drivers, you've seen a lot of Wisconsin drivers, you've seen drivers nationally. This program has opened your eyes and mind to many. There's drivers here from Vermont, there's drivers from California, from Georgia that have won this, drivers from Wisconsin, Florida. There's a lot of representation from across the country. What would you say would be something that a young driver may or may not want to do as they may want to apply for this program and all the good that comes out of it?
I think the first thing is, don't you know, get seat time. If there's any way that you're going to fail in this program, it's if you don't have enough experience. For instance, your knowledge of the race car is a very important thing because, see, in Alan's day, like with Dick Trickle and Tom Reffner and all these drivers, they built their own cars and they knew exactly how that car would react to whatever changes they made or however they built it. And I see that sometimes with our candidates that they don't quite have that depth of knowledge about their race cars. So I think that that's one of the important things. I think the other thing that's important, and you touched on it, is never give up. Uh, Alan, I remember the after they had that bad race, I think it was at Dover,
Mhm.
where um, all of a sudden they fell way behind. And then the next day, the crew got together and they said, well, we didn't lose that many points there. We didn't lose that much of a position. So we can still do it. And I think that that's an important thing in this program too, is that you may be behind in a few points, or you may think, oh, I don't know if I have a chance, but that wouldn't be Alan. Alan would say, I've still got a chance, until they nail the lid on the coffin to get this done.
One last point I want to bring up about the importance and the specialty of having Alan's crew guys, Alan's key people that surrounded him. Tom Roberts, Cal Lawson were part of the brain trust to make it work for him. But the shop guys, the crew
Yeah.
guys, the over the wall guys, the crew chief Paul Andrews, they're all still involved in this program. They want to restore the Underbird at the NASCAR Hall of Fame that's in the
Hmm.
basement waiting to get redone. It doesn't happen often in motorsports or in any other sport that there's that much of a draw and that much cohesiveness. That is so special. And I'm thinking that you've been able to live through that and you continue to talk to these guys as well. It's got to be neat to
Yeah.
carry on that flow as well.
It really is. It's just wonderful to know that they had that experience with Alan, that others may have dropped out of the crew, and others may have been run out by Alan, but they stuck through thick and thin, and they have that kind of experience to share, with you, and that to me is very important. And it is like, when you think about the depth of their love for Alan, I always remember when I was doing the book and talking to Danny Glad. Danny Glad said we probably all should have gone and seen a psychologist after Alan's death because it hurt us that much, and we were disoriented, but it shows how much they loved Alan, and that love still comes out whenever you gather with any of these former crew members that stuck it out and were part of that championship team.
Padre, I do have to ask you, is your book still available to be purchased? And what is the name of the book to look up for online purchasing if it's not available first run?
It is available, and it's available through uh, Coastal 181, and we did a reprint. It was
Oh,
the first editions. My books tend to get more valuable as they get older, and especially if they go out of print. But that Alan Kulwicki book was really getting up there in price, and so we printed another edition of it. And I would say that the best place to go to get the book is Coastal 181. And they do my other books too. As you know, I've did one recently on Trickle and Reffner and that whole Midwest era of racing. It's called 67. It's the year that those guys won 67 features in one summer.
each of them did that. It's amazing to know.
Yeah,
And I'm going to read that book next. I promise you. So the name of the book to search for then, Padre, is Alan Kulwicki Against All Odds, or is there another
yeah,
title?
it's Alan Kulwicki Against All Odds.
I
Hmm.
have the book. I've read the book. I encourage you to do that to learn more about Alan Kulwicki. We have the opportunity to see the next class of stars being celebrated in December 9th at a banquet in Charlotte where the Kulwicki Cup winner will be revealed. We also know that January 1st, 2026 is when the portal will open for others to apply to become the next class of Kulwicki driver development finalists. The website to go to is KowickiDDP.com for more information. You also going to attend the banquet on December 9th. Are you going, Padre? Are you going to make it down?
Definitely am. Wouldn't miss it.
Great to spend some
Wouldn't
time
miss
with you.
it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It'd be great spending more time with you. And as you can tell, there's passion behind this. And certainly Father Grubba's book and other things can make this happen on a continual basis. And they need sponsorship for the program, but people like Father Grubba are committed and dedicated to this. And hopefully you can be part of this going forward. Father Grubba, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.